Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to cover how to install the joint collar and the ring work. Probably go ahead and do the ferrule and the tip on the shaft, and I will also include in the same video how I thread, tap and thread for the joint pin, and this will be a 3/8 modified pin. Now what this shaft will be going on the actual conversion cue that I showed the CA clear cut video on. Now everybody's joint diameter is a little bit different. Mine is 840, so 840 thousandths in diameter. And the first thing that you want to do is kind of get set up for the task. You know, get your machine set up, get it spaced out right, get the stick out amount proper. Measure your joint collar on the butt of the cue so you can transfer it to the joint collar so it gets an even match. A lot of people use a sanding mandrel, and there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I encourage it. It's just that I've been doing it for 30 years and I can do it with a set of calipers and get it just as fine. And that's just my preference and how I like to do it. That doesn't mean that it's the way it should be done. It's just one of the ways it can be done. Now, the first thing that I'll do is, and yes, I'm smoking a cigarette. The first thing that I'll do is get this shaft set up in the machine where it needs to be up at the headstock. Now, ideally what you want to do is you want to have just enough material or shaft sticking out of the headstock to where it's as close to the face of the headstock as possible, because that's the truest point. The farther out you go, the more deflection you have. Well, not really deflection, but run out. Again, ideally, you want it to be in a position to where it's close enough to where you can do the assembly that you need, but or rather, it's far away enough to where you can put on the assemblies that you need, but it's close enough to where it's as accurate as it can be. Now, in this case, as I said, my joint diameter is 0.840. So the first thing that we need to do is measure everything that we're going to put on it. And what I mean by that is the joint collar and any kind of ring work that's going to go on it. And I always do the ring work and the joint collar before I tap and thread. That's just my process. You can tap and thread first. I just do it last. But let me grab a set of calipers that I use for measuring that, and I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. If I'd have thought ahead, I'd have had these handy already. But the first thing that you want to do is get this shaft in a position to where it needs to be. Again, you want it close enough to where it can be as true as possible, but far enough out to where it's going to accept all the parts that are going to go on here. So the first thing I need to do is measure all the parts. So I have a joint collar, I have a white ring, I have a brass ring, I have another white ring, and another black ring. And this is what matches that conversion cue that I was doing. Now, all these are going to be different. It all depends on you and how you choose to build a cue and what all inlays and stuff like that you do to it. But I'll take that whole assembly, you can see here, and then I'll take my calipers and I will measure the thickness of that right here. And then I will clamp that down on the caliper, and then I'll pull these out. Once I have those out, I'll put that stuff back on here, and then I'll take this measurement and I will transfer it to this here. Now what I'm going to do is change camera positions so you can see it a little bit better, a little bit more close up, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Now, this is the same situation that I was in earlier. I just changed the camera angle. And again, I've already taken the measurement with the caliper, and I need to transfer this ring pattern to the joint collar. Now the next thing you'll do is you want to make a score line on the shaft itself. With this already having the dimension that we need, then it makes it easier because remember, it's already locked down. To turn the machine on, watch your hands, don't get them caught up in the chuck. Bring the caliper over, and you want to make this part touch the face first and then bring it in. And you want this other tip to score a line. So let me turn it on real quick and I'll show you what I mean. Okay. Now, at that point, you have a score line. Now, I don't know if the camera picks it up or not, but it's there. Then you want to take your left-handed tool, get it up close to it, and line it up with your score line. Now I need to turn the machine on so I can get a good visual. Right. Now your machine is in a situation to where it is lined up. The cutter is lined up with your score line. It's a left-handed cutter, and I will go in and score it first. And the reason that I want to score it, let me reduce the video size again so you can kind of see more. Okay, the reason that I want to score it is because if you don't score first and you just start making passes into it this way, then it's going to leave fluff on the end and little fuzzies and stuff like that. And you can very well chip beyond where you need to cut. And if you do that, then it's not, you might have to throw it away. So always make your score cut first and then come back and cut it down to size. So let me go ahead and make the score cut. It doesn't have to be very deep. I'd say probably at the most about maybe an eighth of an inch deep, if that. All right. Now the score line is cut. Let me try to blow it back up a little bit. There you go. Now you can see that I've made the score, and given the fact that it's a left-handed cutter, it did two things. It faced off where the rings are going to go on, and it also made a chamfer cut as well. And that just, it doesn't really do anything for you, it just makes it look pretty. But as you cut it off, you'll see. Now, the next step is to slowly take incremental passes until the rings fit on there. And right now it's oversized, obviously, and I always use a black ring. If you have a combination of black rings and brass rings and white rings, then it's always the case that the black ring is going to be the one that's the smallest. And they all say they're 0.625, but when they're stamped, and that's how they, and I know they are, the black ring, for whatever reason, is always just a hair smaller. We're talking 0.02 of an inch. But you want the black ring to fit snugly on there. So let's get it down to where that fits. I mean, I'm going to try and do as much of this as I can without turning the air on, the dust collection, because you can hear me better. So let me see if I can't get this to fit first. And just, again, we're taking incremental passes until this black ring fits. Check it. I know that I'm not there yet, but just as a safety, I like to always check it ahead of time. So a couple more little passes. Then check it again. Okay, now you'll notice that there's no wobble this way, and it fits nice and even. I mean, it goes on fairly easily, and there's no wobble in it, and that's what you're looking for. So you can do a test fit. Get this out of the way. You can do a test fit. You can put your black ring on, put the white ring, the brass ring, and then my white ring, and then finally my joint collar. When I put that on there, what I'm looking for is to make sure that it's, you know, gonna fit. It's not sticking out too far, and it's not too far in. You want to have just a little bit sticking out, like a fingernail's worth. And if you get that, then after you get everything glued up, you'll take a face-off pass to true it all back up. So what I'll do at this point, let me reduce the camera size. What I'll do at this point is lay everything out in the order that it's going to go in. So the joint collar is going to go on last, the white ring is going to go on second to last, the brass ring is going to go on third to last, then the white ring again, fourth to last, and then finally the black ring. So in proper order, the black ring goes on first, then the white, then the brass, then the white, then the joint collar itself. So there are a couple different ways of doing this. Some people like to thread it on, and that's fine, but I'm showing the compression method fit. And what that is when you use epoxy to slide them on, no threads, and then compress it on, let it sit there and rotate at a slow speed until it cures. So give me just a minute to get that going as well. And the epoxy that I use, I'll show you when it's unopened. The epoxy that I use is a 5-minute JB Weld. I find that this is very sufficient for this process, and very workable. Now I'll take a non-waxed Dixie cup. You don't want it to have any wax inside of it. So have a non-waxed Dixie cup. Make sure there's nothing inside there. Set that down, and you want to have a stir stick or popsicle stick. Have that there. And you need something to wipe off the excess with, which I use another brawny paper towel. Set this right here. And then you want to mix up your epoxy. Now, on the epoxy, you've got a resin and a hardener. I always put the resin in first and the hardener in last. It's just choice. You can do it the way you want to. But to me, it makes more sense to put the resin in because the hardener is going to start working immediately. So you're supposed to weigh it out 50-50. I count mine because I've been doing it so long, I just know. So I'm going to count to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's not necessarily seconds, but more or less laps. And then do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to mix it up very well. And it is very important that you mix this thoroughly. If you don't mix it properly, then it's never going to cure. So you have time. It says 5-minute epoxy, but you have time to work it. The 5-minute refers to the time that it begins to activate. And you'll know that it's activating because it's going to get warm. Actually, it'll get rather hot. So mix it up very well. And then once it's mixed up, you set this cup to the side, and then you want to turn your machine on, but turn it down. You want to go one. You have one that comes towards you, which is counterclockwise. You want to go clockwise at the slowest speed your machine can go. And that way, as you're putting the epoxy on, it's pulling it off because it's going this way. So it's pulling it off the stick, off the stir stick. Now put a thin coat on the entire thing, a real thin coat. And the reason I do that is because it lays everything down if there's any fluff, and it makes it easier for it to go onto the cue or the shaft. And the next thing is start installing rings. Put your black ring on, and then take a little bit of your clear or epoxy, put a thin layer on that, put your white ring on, or whatever ring you're using at the time, another thin layer, put your next ring on, and then another thin layer. I actually dropped that one on the floor, so I gotta grab another one. So another ring, and then finally you're ready for your butt cap. Your joint collar. Sorry about that. On your joint collar, you want to do something a little bit different. Get a good little scoop of it and apply it to the very end, not in the front, but on the very end, and get a little hump there. And then come back and put a little bit on the face. And then you want to take a little scoop of it take your joint collar and push it onto the face of it. You're pushing it down inside, but it's in the front of it. And the reason that you do this is because when you put this on there, it's going to push this epoxy forward, closing up any kind of inconsistencies that you may have. Now when you put this on, put it on like that, move it back and forth a little bit, and you want to take your tailstock and get it up close so you can move everything else forward. And you want to use a live center and something to press it with so it can turn with it. Bring it up close, tighten it up, press this up against it until you feel comfortable with it. Give it some pressure, not a lot, give it some pressure, and then tighten it down. Now take your rag, I only need half of it, so I'll just use half of it. Take your rag and wipe off the excess. Turn the machine off and wipe off the excess. When you're wiping it off, pull while you turn. That way it comes off in a little streak. And try to get as much of it off as you can. And there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get all of it off of the surface. And then you want to let it sit there and cure. I usually give it about 20 minutes to cure. Let me see if I can adjust this camera a little bit. Now, once that cures, and you'll see, once that cures up, then you'll be able to come back and cut this down to size and then face it off. Now, a couple things I want to touch on while this is setting. You do not want to use CA glue for this process. Two reasons. One is it's going to break down over time. Two, where this black ring meets the shaft itself, if you use super glue, it's going to leave a glue line there, and that's not going to be very presentable, and there's no way around that. You will get a glue line. Don't care how hard you press this together, you will have a glue line. If you use epoxy, you will not get a glue line. Now, I'm going to break off of this and give it about 20 minutes to cure. I'll come back and then we'll go ahead and face it off and true it up to the right size. Okay, I'm back. I have given it about a half hour for the epoxy to set up and harden up good. Now what we'll do is we'll take off the pressure from it, move the tailstock back, and we're going to take the joint collar and the ring work down to 840. So let's get the pressure off of that, get the tailstock out of the way, take that off, and now we should be in a position to where we can start working on it. I'm going to enlarge the video just a little bit, so hold on just a second. I'll go a little bit deeper there. I'll get this tuned in. There we go. Now we'll start doing the cut itself, and I'm going to take it down to 840. I'm not going to turn on the air, although I do recommend using your exhaust to keep the dust out of the air. But for the sake of the video, I'm not going to turn that on. So let's get this turned on and start cutting it down. Now notice that the rings are higher than the joint collar. I'm going to cut the rings down to the joint collar and then take full passes until I get to my 840. And every once in a while I'll stop it, drop the calipers on it to measure it. And now I'll just stop it real quick and do just a quick check to see where we're at. And we still got a little bit farther to go to hit our 840. And it's okay. I mean, stop and check it as many times as you need to. The worst thing is if you go too far, you can't put that back. So take your time, take small cuts when you get close until you get it right the first time. I know that we're getting there. We are. That's perfect, actually. So that's exactly where we need to be. And now we want to, now that we have this done, I'll take one more little pass. I'm not going to go in anymore. I'm just going to take one more pass to clean it up a little bit, and then I'll come back and we'll face this off. Okay. Now that's cleaned up, and what we want to do is we want to face this off. Let me see if I can get a pointer. Now that all this lines up with the shaft and it's at 840, we want to come back and do a face-off pass. Not a big one, because we're going to do another one in a little bit once we get this threaded. But we'll do a face-off pass, and then we'll come back and we'll do the threading. Blows off the air hose real quick. Okay. Now we're in a position to where we have it faced off and we're ready for threading. If you look at it, you can see a little dot that I put right there. I put that dot right there early on before this is ever done, and it just gives me a surface reference. So I know that once that dot disappears, it's faced off to the wood. So now we'll go back, since this is faced off pretty close, we'll go back, we'll disassemble everything on the tailstock, get it ready for doing a step drilling method. A lot of people like to use a boring bar, and then you can do a step drill. I like doing a step drill. If you have accurate tooling and an accurate machine, you can step drill, no problem, just as accurate as you can with a boring bar. And with a little practice, it's pretty easy. So let me get this video just a little farther away. There we go. So we'll take this out. That's the live center. And we're going to start out with a 9/16. And this is actually a 9/16 piloted drill bit. Now, I don't know if you can see that or if your camera's going to focus on it, but it's a 9/16 piloted drill bit. Let me see if I can't get this thing to refocus. Okay, well, it's not going to. Anyway, it's 9/16 piloted. This one, it's very important that you use a piloted drill bit because it's going to help you guide into it. Now, also, it would be beneficial to you to use a 60-degree center drill when you are prepping your shaft, which actually it should already be center drilled for you, and you're going to use that center drill as a guide. Now, you can see the center drill hole in there. I have had that center drill hole in there. Let me blow it back up. I have had that center drill hole in there since stage 1, throughout the entire process of cutting the shaft, turning it around, tapering it, profiling it, up to where we are right now. That center drill hole has always been there, and you want to keep it there. Now I'll use, let me reduce it just a little bit. There we go. Now I will use the step drilling method starting with a 9/64 a piloted drill bit, and I want to put a little bit of tension on the tailstock. And when you put the tension on, slowly tighten it up until, and you'll feel it. You want it to be a little tight, but not too loose to where it moves freely, but not too tight to where you got to put pressure on it. Now I'm going to go in 1.5 inches into this. The average joint pin is about 1.25 inches to 1 1/8 to 1 1/8 to 1 1/4 inches. Some people go a little bit deeper. But just most of the time, I never know where this shaft's going to go. So I always go 1.5 inches deep, which is going to take care of any butt that they put them on. So let's get that one cut, and then we'll move on. We'll step it up, and I'll tell you which one we use. That was a 9/64. Now we'll take that one out, and we're going to put in a 3/16. With 3/16, do the same thing we just did. Take your time, go in smoothly. And now the next step up is going to be your 5/16, and that's going to be our final size. I took a little bit more time with this one, just to be sure that it's nice and straight. Now that's our final size, which is the 5/16. I'm going to blow the hole out with the air hose. And now, let me turn the machine off for a second. Now that we have our size prepped, we want to thread it. Now this is a 3/8 modified thread, or tap rather, and we want to thread this by hand, not under power. And on this one, you see me tightening it by hand earlier. Anytime you're using a tap, you want to go ahead and just tighten it up with the chuck if you can. So get it tight with the chuck. And then slide this up to where it just does touch. Let me back this out just a little bit more so you can see what's happening there. There we go. So you want to put just a little bit of forward pressure on it, leaving this just a little bit loose. That way it can follow along with you. And a little bit of pressure forward and turn it by hand. It only takes a few seconds to do it by hand. You don't need to do it under power, and I don't recommend it. Alright, it has bottomed out, and now we back it back out. Okay, now that's that. Now we're gonna blow that out as well with the air hose. And we'll take the tap out, and we're going to put a larger center drill in it. Well, actually, I'm going to use a deburrer, and I put this deburrer here in it. That is going to clean up the outside wall of the thread at the edge of the joint face. It doesn't take much, just a little tap to clean it up and deburr it. Okay. Now, I'll enlarge the video again, get it back in sync here with the camera so you can see what's happening. And now we're in a position to where we can face it off and do the actual face off of it and true everything up. Let me blow it out one more time though. And now we'll actually do a face off. and you'll see this dot here disappear. Done that, I'll come back with a little piece of 400 to just kind of swirl the edge a little bit. Not much, just touch it. And same thing on the inside, just touch it. And blow out the dust one more time. And that should be it. There we go. We're enlarged. Okay, now you'll notice that there is there's a hint of that dot there. So what I'll do is I'll take one more little face-off pass, and that'll get rid of that. It's just there, and I don't want it there. It's actually ready to go right now. But just to clean it up and get rid of that dot, I'll take one more hair of a face-off pass. I'll come back and say 400 again. And I'll blow it out again since I refaced it. And that should have gotten rid of that dot, and we are good to go. So now, that's how I do it. Nice clean threads. It's down to 840. Everything feels good, and it's ready for clear coat on this end. Now I'm going to stop the video and call this a wrap for the assembly and threading process of your shaft joint. The next video I will show you how to install the tip and the ferrule, compression fit not threaded, and also how to clear coat the last 6 inches of the shaft. So hopefully this video was helpful and you found it helpful, but again, the next video we will be adding the ferrule and the tip, compression fit not threaded, and sealing the last 6 inches of the shaft, and then completing the rest of the shaft, burnishing and sanding and all that good stuff. So again, I hope you liked it. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.